We call our Tuesday, February 20th City Council meeting to order. We will have Pledge of Allegiance and invocation by Councilman Ledford.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you so much, Thank you so much, Councilman Ledford. All right, we do have a special presentation today by Councilman Hester.
There was a great man who once said, outstanding people have one thing in common, an absolute sense of mission. Today we give a proclamation to a man who definitely had an absolute sense of mission for the city of Chattanooga. Ben Taylor. We give this proclamation to Ben Taylor, and it reads, Chattanooga City Council proclamation. Whereas we're here today to express special recognition to Ben Taylor and to honor him, his distinguished 25-year career with the Transportation Division of Public Works Department for the city of Chattanooga. Whereas Ben began his career with the city in 1998 as a traffic system technician and rose through the ranks until his promotion to deputy administrator transportation in 2021. Whereas Ben was instrumental, part of a team responsible for launching the Bike Chattanooga. Whereas Ben has worked constantly for the betterment of our city, both in his role with the Transportation Department, as well as during his 14 years as a volunteer to serve as a part-time deputy for the Native American Reserve Force. This role saw him patrolling Moxon Bend to help preserve the property burial grounds artifacts contained therein, a role he continued to serve at Moxon Bend for several years. Whereas this proclamation is presented to Ben to serve as a reminder that although he is retired, he will always be remembered as a valued employee, dedicated in both his position and our community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the Chattanooga City Council, do hereby recognize, honor, and congratulate Ben Taylor for 25 years of dedicated service to the city of Chattanooga and to give him our best wishes for continued success and future happiness. We're going to pause there. Ryan's coming up. He's going to give another proclamation.
All right. When we have a dedicated public servant who has served over 30 years, it's only appropriate that there's a joint proclamation from both the City Council and from the Mayor. So this proclamation is from the Mayor of the City of Chattanooga. Whereas Ben Taylor has served the City of Chattanooga with distinction and dedication for the past 32 years, and whereas Ben Taylor has held various positions within city government, including Traffic Operations Analyst, Assistant Transportation Engineer, Director of Transportation's Operations, and Deputy Administrator of Transportation, and whereas Ben Taylor has been instrumental in the development and implementation of many important projects, including his superior support for the Bike Chattanooga program and the design of the infrastructure for multimodal transportation, and whereas Ben Taylor has been a tireless advocate for the people of Chattanooga and has consistently put the needs of the community first. Now, therefore, we, Tim Kelly, Mayor of the City of Chattanooga, and Isaiah Hester, member of the City Chattanooga Council and Chair of the Parks and Public Works Committee, do hereby recognize Ben Taylor for 32 years of service to the City of Chattanooga. In witness thereof, we have hereunto our hands and cause the seal of the City of Chattanooga to be affixed the 20th day of February 2024. Thank you to Ben Taylor.
Thank you.
you, Councilman Hester. Thank you, Ryan, on behalf of the mayor. I appreciate everyone. It's been a great 32 years. You mentioned tirelessly. I am tired. It's been an adventure, working all the way from putting together traffic signs while I was going through college to getting the pleasure of working with this administration on the One Chattanooga plan. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Ben. All right. All right. Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Ben, you're not going to get away too quick. Come on, man. Come on. So Ben, I've known you, we've worked with you privately. I've known you for, I think, over 20 years. And you've always, you've just never ceased to amaze me with your knowledge, your professionalism, but not only that, your calmness and coolness in a situation. Even when folks are rightly enraged sometimes about a condition, your ability to work with them and to provide the information that is desperately needed, and then a lot of solutions. So I really, I'm going to miss you. I'm very happy for you, but I'm going to miss you. I miss calling you. You always answer my phone calls or get right back to me, and you provide me with great assistance in helping me do my job. And whoever fills those shoes, will you please make sure they have my cell phone number?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Will do.
So Ben, good luck to you, and hopefully we'll see you around, and in whatever you do next. But best wishes, pal.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Ledford. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hold on for a second. Councilwoman, that was my bad. Councilwoman Burrs.
Hey, I can't let this go by, Ben. So I understand you grew up in the area that I now represent, and I've heard a lot of Ben's stories. I won't repeat them.
Thank you.
You have done a fabulous job, and your grace under fire is really impressive. I have never not gotten a response from you, and it's been a thoughtful response. Usually this response has been to constituents. I think you've been particularly good with the Standifer Gap Bridge,
Unfortunately.
which is one of the city's greatest fiascos. But you've done a wonderful job, and I'm proud to have you as a friend. And do you know what you're going to do when you leave here?
I've been asked that a lot, but as I mentioned that tired complaint or the tired comment a minute ago, my only plan right now is not to go to work on Friday.
Oh,
At that point, I will
wonderful.
figure out what I want to do next.
I think you'll probably be in great demand in the private sector, and guess what? They're right. You're really good at what you do. So congratulations and my personal thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's it for real
All
this
right,
time.
thank you very
Ben.
much,
Thank you so much,
everybody.
thank you. All right, thank you so much. Can I get approval on the minutes? Okay, minutes stand without objection. All right, council, we have a lot going on today, so buckle up and get ready. When we look at our agenda, we also have Parks and Public Works Committee, a Legislative Committee, a Finance Committee, and an attorney-client, and a presentation regarding the stadium, so be ye ready. So let's look at ordinances on their final reading. If you have any comments or questions, please hit your like. All right. Councilwoman Burrs.
Bill, you have the conditions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and I want those read into the record again.
Okay.
It's on that zoning case.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I also want to add in the record the amenities that the people promised. I don't know whether those become conditions or just amenities for the record. My sense is amenities for the record, but I'm asking you for clarification.
And it,
If it's something specifically that you want to be enforced by the, I guess, the land development office on there, it should be read into the record. And it's better if there are conditions that are attached in that regard. If there are things that are, I guess, something that might be subjective on here, then we can deal with that later. But specifically items that objectively should be attached to the development.
Well, when you're talking about Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, when you're talking about things that came out of their mouths
Yes.
that they offered, I can't imagine them not wanting that, but I don't know the proper way to do it.
As long as that's maintained in the record as part of their
Does that
offering.
suffice?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
all right, and that is, plan item 11 or 16?
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
16. I'm sorry, it's plan item 2024-001604 Air Park Drive?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
right,
ma'am.
thank you. And you want the restrictions or conditions read into the record?
Yes.
The conditions are in the record, and also in the record, I'm going to read the amenities, which will hold them to it, because they've agreed to it. It's part of the record.
All right, we looking for your light this evening?
Thank you.
All right, Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this is regarding case 0016 on final reading, if we make any more amendments or conditions added to this, it will kick it back to first reading. So I want to make sure we're aware of that.
No, nothing.
Okay. Very good. Thank
And
you.
they were already in on first reading.
Very good. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. If you would take a look at Public Works, any comments or questions? Items under first reading, we have 2 planning items. Any comments or questions? Councilwoman Knoll?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I am looking to defer letter A on the planning for first reading for 2 months. I'm looking to defer
For
that.
2 months. All right. Thank you. We're looking for that this evening. All right, Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking ahead on 2 months, Councilwoman, we have April 23rd is 2 months out, but then we do have, just for a note, on May 7th, our next planning and zoning following that, so that if you wanted to have that heard in committee, May 7th would be the first opportunity for that. But the 2-month mark would be April 23rd, just if we could pick, when we make the motion. April 23rd? Either one. I just wanted to let those 2 options out there. If you want it heard in planning and zoning committee, though, it will be May 7th.
Okay.
Which is 2 weeks following.
Okay.
So
No, I can use it.
whichever you move for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman Ledford. All right, we have items under Public Works Transportation. I believe 3 items need to be deferred. If we can get someone for transportation, I guess Ben, is he still here? Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, we do have committee today, I apologize. Yeah, all right. Under council office, we have a resolution, item A. We'll have a presentation on that item in just a second. But if you have any questions about resolutions under early learning, economic development, parks and outdoors, or planning, please go ahead and hit your light. Okay. Any questions, any purchasing questions? Go ahead and hit your light if you have questions about that. Okay. And if you will take a look at future considerations, any comments or questions? All right. With that, we will go back to resolutions, item A. I'm sorry, Councilman Hester.
I guess to the administration, can you bring us to a better understanding what is, under economic development 1A, what is
For future considerations?
under future consideration 1A?
Which one is 1A? This,
Shelford Road parcel.
the Shalford, I'm sorry. This is Scott here? Scott, I'm sorry to defer to Scott, but this pertains to parks more than it does. It's just under real property because of the transaction.
Oh, yeah. When we use legal terms, the liberal arts major gets confused. That is the property we walked with you, Councilmember Hester. It is a piece of city-owned land that we are bringing forward as the first part of public ecology conservation in the city. That'll come up to you in the March meeting for a permanent deed restriction that ensures those acres are always preserved for the wildlife, habitat, and the cultural resources we believe may be present on site.
Thank you. I enjoyed that walk through nature. Indeed, I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. First
Yeah.
council member to walk in the woods with me gets a merit badge, so you're good to go.
All right, that's it.
That's it.
All right, thank you so much. And council, if you would take a look, any other questions from future considerations? All right, council, if you can take a look at your next week's proposed agenda. If you have any comments or questions, please hit your light. Okay, I don't see any. We will go back to resolution item A on the council office regarding the stadium. And then we will call Jermaine up here to dazzle us and razzle us with this information. Yes.
Good afternoon. So today what we wanted to do is to provide a brief update on our stadium project. Obviously, over the past several weeks, this staff from the city have been working closely with staff from the county to work on a new framework for financing our stadium. And so today we wanted to provide a brief overview of what that financial framework looks like. I am joined today by Hamilton County Deputy Mayor for Economic Development, Mr. Corey Guerin, who's sitting back here. Corey, please stand up. There he is. He's not too shy. And then we are also joined today by our TIF attorney, Mark Mamentov. What we are essentially asking for the council to do today is to withdraw the resolution that has been on your agenda for the past few weeks regarding increasing the debt amount for the Sports Authority, and instead voting on an MOU next week between the city, the county, and the Sports Authority that provides for an understanding of the financial framework that we will present today. So that is the ask from the administration, and with that, I'll ask Mark to come up to go through the next few slides.
Hello, excuse me, hello yet again. Jermaine told me to be quick because you all are tired of seeing me, but I only have 3 slides, so that's hopefully good. So the main update for today is we've been struggling now for months to figure out how we're going to pay for a stadium that now is estimated costs $115 million. It could go over, but we feel pretty strongly that we can fit it in $115 million. So as you all have heard from all of us several times, 80 million of that would come from the Sports Authority bonds that were approved over 18 months ago now. And so I'm not going to force you all to go over that again. 26 million would come from a subordinate tax increment financing that would now be done through Councilman Henderson's, just want to make sure he's through the Industrial Development Board. Because it's something I know that would, that would be, it would only be payable from the city's increment. That's probably the biggest change from over the last couple of months. And so the county will be contributing in other ways, but this subordinate financing would be payable from the city's tax increment, property tax increment in the South Broad District. There's $1 million, and that's probably a conservative figure that would be earned on the $80 million while it's sitting there until it's spent. So that $1 million can be used toward construction costs. We have a $3 million capital contribution from the team, and then another main new feature that I know Jermaine has spoken with a number of you about, if not all of you, I hope all of you, is there would be an additional $5 million of debt issued by the Sports Authority, and this is that is being used to bridge that last $5 to $6 million gap that we have been struggling for some time to figure out how to do. This would not have the broad pledge of non-property tax revenues that supports the $80 million. This would be backed by a commitment to use hotel motel taxes and the local option sales taxes from that area to the extent it would not be payable, to the extent there's not adequate funds from tax increment from the South Broad District to do it. That $5 million would be ahead of the $26 million in terms of allocation of tax increment revenues. So as I'm sure you all have done the math, that hopefully now adds up to $115 million. And so that's how we hope to get there if you guys decide that you're supportive of this structure. The 80 million didn't change. It's still payable from the same sources of funds. I've had this slide a couple of times. So I'm not going to force you all to go back through that. But here's the other changes that primarily have happened since over the last, that we talked about it. I talked about the $26 million in subordinate debt that would now be issued by the City Industrial Development Board, and it would be payable from the city's incremental property tax revenues. I'm just explained the $5 million of additional sports authority debt. The county has asked to contribute to the South Broad District by making a contribution toward public education. And Corey certainly can answer questions about that, but they've committed to spend $15 million, $10 million at Howard, and another $5 million on schools in the area above and beyond their capital expenditure plan. And so that is an additional $15 million commitment. The thought here is that the city is looking at $10 million of road infrastructure improvements, and then you're incurring that additional $5 million of debt. If you go through it, the thought was that this $15 million would match up with the city's commitments in that area. And so that was important. The $3 million capital contribution, after I totally didn't flub, but looked stupid answering Vice Chairwoman Hill's questions last time about the operating expenses and the thing, that's all gone. But what we were trying to accomplish is still largely there. Is we wanted some additional money up front from the team. The only source of revenue that they could use to be able to borrow to do that was parking revenues. Parking revenues were going to be very indeterminate, particularly if they go away over a period of time, as we hope, as that area is developed. And so instead of getting the parking revenues, which was discussed again 18 months ago, the team will make a $3 million upfront capital contribution. Based on present values and things like that, we felt that was a fair exchange. But all that talk about utilities and things like that, please ignore that I ever came up in front of you and said that. So that's out the door. The capital reserve, when this was approved 18 months ago, the city and the county agreed to split $150,000 a year to go into a capital reserve. At the time, we weren't ready to, the real cost of maintaining a stadium this is significantly higher than that. I mean, you're going to have significant expenditures starting in probably the 15th year for new roofs and things like that. So you really need to develop a larger capital reserve. So we're going to fund that through through tax increment revenues, but also the team's increase above $1 million. This goes up 1.5% a year until we hit certain targets. And so that increment, that additional rent would go to help fund that and reduce the amount that the city would have to contribute. We're working on finalizing. I know one thing that the community is concerned about is we don't want to build a stadium out in the middle of a brownfield site, and then it ends up being an orphan stadium with nothing around it. So we're working on firming up development commitments of what's going to go around it. I'd like to be able to give you details right now, but we're still working through the precise wording of that. And certainly by the time we would ask you all to do a real vote on what's going on, the MOU that's in front of you is non-binding. It's really an effort to show that the city and the county have come together, and this is what both the administration support. But we'll need to come back to you all to ask you to approve various documents to implement this structure in a few weeks. And so at that point in time, I hope to be able to say, hey, this is exactly what the development commitment will look like at that point in time. And then a portion, and again, we have to work out the details on this, but I know, obviously, I spent a lot of time personally working in the affordable housing area, and I know that that's important in this particular area. And one thing that I know the administration and Jermaine is supportive of, and the mayor is we are projecting to have a fairly substantial local option sales tax from this, is to use some of that to help with affordable housing initiatives in that area. And I know initiatives are somewhat of a euphemism, and what does that really mean? But we'll work out I know we got to come to you, but I just wanted to make sure that concept was put in front of you. So these are the significant changes. I want to emphasize that the MOU that was put on your agenda docket is agreed upon by the city and the county. The team and the site owner got it just right before it was sent to put on the docket. And so they obviously have some comments and questions, and we're going to try to address those. I feel like we're 96% of the way. I mean, they don't have any comment or questions about the sources of funds, but there's some specific wording. Obviously, when you put something in writing that you've talked about on the phone for hours and hours, then there's always issues that pop up. I think we've made substantial progress, and I hope that we'll be able to move forward. we're asking you all to consider this MOU next week, because if, there is a lot of legal work. We're sort of shifting directions and shifting to the IDB on the issuance of a big chunk of this debt. If you all are not satisfied with the structure, which we hope you are, we don't want to spend that time and effort if this is not acceptable to the folks that have to vote on it. So we would ask you all to think through this and vote on it next week. And again, non-binding, but it's really a vote of yes, that we can live with this. And I can assure you, it's been the result of many, many hours of hard negotiations on both sides. So Jermaine, do you want anything to add to?
Sure. I don't have anything to add other than the fact that we do appreciate, from the city's perspective, we do appreciate the work of staff, particularly Corey, Deputy Mayor Corey Guerin from the county, in terms of working through this, and also with working with Perimeter Properties and the Lookouts to get to a financing structure that we think would be feasible for the city and good for the taxpayers. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Good, because you have a lot of them.
Okay.
Councilman Ledford.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Jermaine, I'll kick off. Number one, and Corey, thanks for being here with us today. This is an MOU, obviously, we're asking to go in place of what we have currently on our agenda. So for the city attorney, would that motion then be something along the lines of a motion to withdraw and replace?
Yes.
With an MOU tonight? Okay, very good.
Yes.
And Jermaine, what are the odds of the MOU being, having to be amended from the floor next week, given what Mark just said about a few details that may need to be worked out?
I don't anticipate that the MOU itself will be amended. There are some very specific things in the exhibit which is attached to the MOU, which is the term sheet. Mm-hmm. There are things within that exhibit that will change as we continue to negotiate.
Sure.
But as Mark indicated, I do feel like we're about 96% of the way there. And so there could be some changes in the exhibit, but not changes in the MOU.
Okay.
No.
And still from a broader perspective, I want to say thanks again for Corey for being here, because I think the public from this point has seen what it feels like only one partner at the table. So Corey, with you being here with some certainty of this MOU, I didn't see signatures on this yet, but are you saying now with certainty that this is the county and the city coming together to present this MOU? You're more than welcome to come up. I think that's very important to get on record. I think this is what I would consider turning the page.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a very fair position to hold. This has been a collaborative effort that we've put a lot of time and energy into, both on the city and county side. So I think that's exactly right.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming to the table. And I know you've been there watching the county commission statements. I know that you have been there the whole time, and I appreciate that this is now what I consider a joint effort on a joint presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mark, can I ask you, obviously in government financing options, we use bonds, notes, and bills. Usually a maturity date or is involved with the choice of one. Why did we decide to use a note instead of a bond, I guess?
Yes, the bonds themselves, just to help, because it's a great question, are 30 years. And a lot of people, because of the way treasuries are issued, they use the terms bonds, notes, and bills, and notes often are, 5 to 10 years,
Right.
something like that. That is, and I use that term for that very reason. It doesn't, under state law, we could call it whatever we want to call it, a bond, a note, or a note. I was trying to distinguish it because we hope and believe that there will be adequate revenue sources that will not be nearly as long a maturity, that we'll be able to pay it back. Our goal is to use probably bank financing on that smaller note so that it can be prepaid at any time. And it would also be tax exempt, so it'll be a much lower interest rate than on the private development notes. And so I use that term, again, to emphasize that, number one, it would not be publicly sold, and number two, it hopefully will be a shorter maturity.
On the additional notes coming out of the Sports Authority, are you capturing the entire TIF district or just the development say, for example, a specific area? Because I'm kind of thinking you're not.
No, the additional
grabbing.
5 million would be the entire district, as would the 26 million
Okay.
behind it.
Still pulling from the entire
Entire
470
district,
acres?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Jermaine was pointed out to me, I want to make sure the sales tax backstop that we're looking at would only be from the retail sources on the Wheeland Foundry side, not from the entire district.
Okay, and that might have been more to my
Yes.
question.
Sorry.
On the sales tax.
He picked up that I wasn't answering your question. I'm sorry.
Because I thought it's more of
Yes.
a controlled area.
Yes.
Probably primarily around the development surrounding the stadium and not the entire.
And the sales
district.
taxes, that's absolutely true.
Okay. Obviously, can you talk a little bit, either you or Jermaine, about the city gets a little bit more benefit, obviously, than the county. It should be 50-50, but with schools involved, when we hear that the city has more to work with, so to speak, why this path, I think, has been chosen, and it kind of makes sense. And
Sure.
Councilman Henderson's been sniffing that out for quite a while, so I appreciate that.
Sure. Well, so as many of you know, on most TIFs, the city puts more money into a TIF anyway. And so on your average TIF, the city usually winds up putting in almost $2 for every $1 that the county contributes, because the county has to withhold so much for fees, but mostly to support public education. So most of the increment that is created in a TIF on the county side goes into public education. So in most TIFs, and this one is the same, the city winds up putting in 2/3 for every 1/3, essentially, in terms of the TIF. Now, it is also not uncommon there have been big projects in our city's past in which the county did not participate. So if memory serves me correctly, I don't think that the county participated when the city did the CDRC bonds for the DRC and for the Chattanooga Hotel and for renovations to the convention center. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, that was city only. And I think the same may also be true for the 21st Century Waterfront bonds, but I'll double check that just to confirm. So there have been times in the past where the city has stepped out and done something on its own without necessarily the county's participation. But it is also important to remember that the county does support public education, whereas we don't have any of our dollars to support public education.
Okay. And Mark, do we have anyone here from Younger and Associates?
No, not today.
Probably not, so I'll have to go to you on Mark. Mark, in Sunday's paper, I found it very encouraging to see another $115 million project that was announced within the TIF boundary, and I believe there are more coming. Those numbers were not in the Younger projections at all, if I'm correct. So that is I guess a bonus, one of the bonus projects.
That is a bonus.
A bonus,
It was
okay.
not counted in the Younger report.
Okay.
That makes me very happy. I'm glad you told me. I had not seen that. So.
Yeah, got to read the paper up here.
I will. I subscribe.
Madam Chair, I believe that is all that I have at the moment. I would like to say that, Jermaine, if you would clarify for us, because we've heard a lot of information that comes down the pike about the CBA. The CBA is a separate discussion.
Yes.
Government is not involved in that. We
Correct.
covered that at a Leadership Chattanooga this week and made sure that people understood that. So that is ongoing and still working through, but it's not part of our decision-making.
That is correct.
And also, I've also heard in tracking this that the development agreement, where is it? Well, the development agreement also comes down the pipe.
It does.
And we'll also have an opportunity to be reviewed. Mark, I believe you're writing those. And comes before the IDB
Yes.
or the Sports Authority for a final review in a public hearing process. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The public hearing for the development agreement.
The public hearing technically is for the actual amendments to the economic impact, but it will all be part and parcel of the same meeting, so there'll be an opportunity to comment on it. And we will have a draft of a development agreement for you all to include in your package when you're asked to consider those matters.
Okay. So the action that we're taking on Tuesday is basically saying yes. The county and the city are saying, yes, let's move forward.
Yes.
Very good. All right. Madam Chair, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And just for clarification, this evening you are looking to withdraw And we don't need to replace because we have that on for next week.
Just need to withdraw?
Just need to withdraw.
Thank you for the
Yes,
clarification.
thank you. All right, so next we have Councilman Henderson, followed by Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jermaine and Mark don't go anywhere, but, so I guess I was under the understanding and looking at this screen that's up here now, I was thinking that all the debt, the additional debt would be running through the IDB. But this indicates the additional 5 million will be going through the Sports Authority.
The IDB statute, Councilman Henderson, does not allow the city to backstop that for the stadium with the hotel motel tax and the local option. I would have loved to put that 5 million through the IDB as well, but we can't legally do what we're thinking we can do through the IDB. That backstop of those two sources of funds that I mentioned, or that's a special statutory authority that's in the Sports Authority law that's not in the IDB statute.
Okay, so would this not mandate that we increase the debt ceiling for the Sports Authority? It was at 80 million.
I'm sorry.
It was at 80 million. Do we not need to now increase it an additional 5?
Yes, when we come, if you all feel comfortable with us moving forward with this deal structure, we would be, the two approvals that I know we would be asking you for is to amend the economic impact plan that allows for the tax increment to flow the way we're describing, plus to raise the to approve 5 million,
Okay,
as
so
you just asked, yes.
So raising the debt ceiling in Sports Authority is coming later
Yes.
down the road?
Yes. I was hoping we'd not to ask you to do it at all, but 5 million, yes, unfortunately, we're going to have to ask you to do that.
Yeah, okay. So let me ask you this before you go anywhere. Since the county has chosen not to participate with the city in the additional $26 million, is that going to necessitate the need for additional development, since it's only going to be the city portion going to that 26 million? In other words, I think we were looking at numbers of to cover both debts, about $1 billion. If I understand, 500 million would take care of the 80 million. Are we now looking at having to have additional development in order to cover that 26 million?
No, because it was originally part of the 40, right?
Yeah, and that's a great question, number one. Number two is because the 40 that we talked about when we did the younger went down to 26, that was proportionally basically lowering it to what the city tax increment could support. So we should still be right in that 500 to 550 million range for what it would take.
The 550 is to support the 80.
Yes.
But it takes the billion to support, now, you're saying now it takes the
Yes,
billion.
yes.
The billion will now support the 26 million since it's only the city.
I would like to tell you it's totally precise, Councilman, but it's probably.
And we can
yeah,
talk in round
yeah.
numbers.
Round
I certainly
numbers, yes,
understand that.
yes.
A billion here, a billion there, you know.
Yes, yes. We just picked up 150 million. I'm so happy to hear.
Okay.
So Councilman Henderson, just to clarify on that point, when the financing was first considered of having a $40 million subordinate debt, remember that because the city puts in $2 for every $1 of tax increment that goes into it, essentially the city would have been reimbursing for $26 million of the $40 million debt. And so that's also sort of how we were able to get to the 26 million, is because that's what the city would have had to have reimbursed anyway.
Yeah, okay. So the 26 million would still, in our previous resolution, it basically said that under no circumstances would this 26 million be backed by the full faith and credit or taxing power of the city. Will that still be in that MOU or that agreement?
Absolutely.
In other words, that 26 million is
Solely
still not
payable,
going to be
yes.
backed by the city.
Correct.
It's just issued now by the IDB.
Correct.
And it is still at the risk of the developers and the team.
That's right. But we, the city, would be responsible for the additional 5.
Yes, specifically it would be payable from property tax increment, and to the extent that property tax increment falls short, it would be payable from hotel motel tax revenue or local option sales tax revenue generated from the U.S. Pipe Wheel and Foundry site itself.
Well, just so that nobody's confused about property tax, let's talk about development increment then.
Okay.
So that we're not confusing anybody about their property taxes going to pay for this 5 million.
That's correct. So it's
It'll
only property
be
tax
from the
increment
in the district.
within the TIF district.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. All right, I think that's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Henderson. We have Councilwoman Coonrod, followed by Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Chip, you hit on a couple of my questions about the 26 million, but Mark, I'm not sure if you're the best person to explain this to me, because you done really confused me a little even more, but I'll sideline that with Jermaine later. But my question that I believe that you can answer for me, Mark, is about the county's commitment to public education. Originally, in the emails that we received, it strictly said only for Howard School. Now you're saying that it's for all the schools that's within the public education district on the South Broward district area. So what's the commitment towards it? Is it just only for infrastructure to match hours?
What I've been told is 10 million definitely for Howard, and 5 million could be used for Howard or other schools in the district or serving the district. Is that accurate, Corey?
So I believe that includes Howard, Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, Howard, Calvin Donaldson, and Clifton Hills, is my understanding.
Yeah, because those two would need to be included since they're feeder schools to Howard. And, and I would hope that it's more than just getting a sports field. And so, what exactly is the commitment that you all are willing to give?
So the desire with that commitment was in the name of community benefit, kind of community-facing assets through education. So a $10 million investment towards Howard to be put to use, working with the administration, with the schools, and with the community. A huge part of this commitment was making sure that at the same time stadium developments come online, that the entire South Broad district and the community benefit in real time. So these are investments that will be coming online on the same timeline that the stadium's coming out. So that would be 10 million upfront and then 5 million over a subsequent 4-year period distributed to schools that are served by the TIF area, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Schools are feeding the Howard.
Right.
To do whatever they want to do with the money, or is it earmarked for a specific thing when it comes to the school? Because we're talking about an area that the stadium is going to be built in, and I shared that information last week. An area that has been historically distressed and impoverished. And when we're talking about the kids that go to Howard, Calvin and Donaldson, Clifton Hills, those feeder schools, they're coming from concentrated poverty. So when you're saying we're just going to give this money to do what? I think I want some
I think
other
they're in the
clarifying
process
answers.
of trying to identify what specific projects and what specific improvements.
So y'all don't know yet? So y'all want us to pass this based on, I don't know?
Well, it's not, you're not passing the county's portion, because the county's portion will be up to the county. At the end of the day, the schools are under the purview of the county. This is simply an MOU that basically says that you all are in agreement with the city and the county on the financing structure for the stadium itself, not for the portion for the schools.
Okay. I'll be at county commission.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, you good, Councilwoman?
Yep.
All right. Madam Vice Chair, followed by Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say that I appreciate what you all have done to take some of the unnecessary complexity out of this deal. And I acknowledge, as I did when we spoke about it last, that I recognize you were trying to put every ingredient in to answer every question. And what we saw was we got all that, and it just made things a little overly confusing in a deal that obviously is complex. Because Councilwoman Coonrod was just talking about the school investment, I'll start there. Thank you very much for the term sheet. It's very helpful to get the details. I think it would be useful if Corey could join us to talk about the school investment again. And I want to put a fine point on what this investment could do and what it will not do. So if we look at page 9 and 10 of the term sheet, something that stands out to me as very important is that this $10 million upfront investment for the Howard School. Corey, I'd like to understand what your thoughts are about what community-related assets are for the Howard School.
Yeah, so my understanding is that these would be investments that the community would be able to engage in, public facing, not strictly inside classrooms, but it would be an effort in working both with the school and the community to identify what the best use of those funds would be.
Okay, well, worth noting is that the school board member that represents Howard has said that Howard School desperately needs new HVAC and that there are portions of that building that are inhabitable because they are either so hot or so cold. It may not be a sexy community asset in a way of something that's outside and sports facilities, as Councilwoman Coonrod had pointed out, but that may in fact be one of the things that they need the most. The other thing I wanted to point out, the additional $5 million will be allocated by the county for capital investments over a span of 4 years. And they'll be directed toward public schools within this TIF zone. So that also includes Calvin Donaldson and Clifton Hills. But I do want the council to know that within this term sheet, it makes it very clear that this is going to be new money for new projects because the school board has already approved that Clifton Hills is the number 2 priority on the facility plan, moving forward with $200 to $250 million in bonds. So when we talked about that cup game last time, this is going to be new money for new projects. So while we all know Clifton Hills desperately needs investment, this $5 million needs to be for something other than what they've already said that they will pay for. Are we on the same page on that, Corey?
That's correct.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you very much. Okay, so the other things that I wanted to point out and just make sure that are clear and on the record, and Mark, you started talking about them, but I just want to shine a spotlight. In terms of the order, that money will be repaid with increment and the sales tax. We get the 80 million,
Yes,
then we get the 5 million,
yes,
then the 26 million.
yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So we still have the private loans as they are subordinate to
Yes.
the 2 loans that the city is taking out.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And let me see if there was anything else. Madam Chair, that is all that I have right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jermaine, I want to follow up with one more thing.
Yes, sir.
And we've decreased the amount that we originally thought we were going to need as far as building this stadium. And I've spoken to you before. I want to make sure this is on the record. I want to make sure that what we build there is something that everybody in this room can be proud it's in Chattanooga. I don't want to walk into that thing and think, oh my God, what have we done? Okay?
Sure.
Do we feel confident that this is the amount of money that we need to build something that we're going to be proud of in Chattanooga?
We do. We do think that the final price of the stadium will hover right around $115 million. But I'm obviously not a baseball team owner, so I would also ask Jason Fryer to come up.
You know, there's 3 principles when you're building, and you can control quality, you can control price, and you can control size.
Yes.
And usually the owner, the client can control 2, but not the 3rd. So
That's right.
the size, the size is what the size is.
Sure.
We're now trying to control the money.
Yes.
That leaves the contractor to control the quality.
Yes.
I want to make sure the quality is still there.
Okay. What? Bill, you want to come up for just a second? Jason, did you want to say anything? So Bill has been working closely with the contractors and the construction team on behalf of the Sports Authority. So Bill, you want to talk a little bit about the quality?
Certainly. So Councilman Henderson, I think we certainly recognize that this needs to be a premier facility, and that it needs to be exactly as you stated, that it needs to be able to represent what Chattanooga wants and needs it to be. Having said that, a lot of the pieces where we are expecting some of that cost reduction to come in is because we are seeing some cost in the current pricing that are coming in slightly less than budgeted, which is good. And so we're fortunate that we're hitting a lot of those things at a good time, and those are things that we will continue to do. We already have an owner's agent that represents the Sports Authority, which is working directly, with me and with the team and with the developers as well. We will be watching over this project the same as we watch over any of our other projects, whether it's ordinary small capital projects, large consent decree projects, or Enterprise South projects. And so we will certainly be making sure that our intent in any stretch is not to cut any corners on the specifications or the quality of what would go into the project. We will, of course, make value engineering determinations to try to find ways that provide the same experience at perhaps some lower cost, and that's possible in some instances, and we still have some of those on the table that we're looking at as well.
I just want to know when I walk in that stadium that I'll be proud that this is in Chattanooga.
Yes, sir. I want the very same thing.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Councilman Henderson. All right, I don't see any more lights. Are there any final statements before we move into Parks and Public Works?
No, we just appreciate your consideration and your patience. We know that this has been an ordeal, but we thank you for being a part of the process.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. All right, we will move into Parks and Public Works with Councilman Hester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we accept the minutes? Madam Clerk, ordinance on final reading, 7F, please.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 24, Article 14, Sections 24-501 and 24-502 relating to speed on through streets.
See no hands. Ordinance on first reading, transportation, CDE, please.
Item C, an ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 32, Article 3, Sections 32-61 through 32-85, relating to excavations and restoration of paving. Item D, an ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 32, Article 12, street construction. Item E, an ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 32, Section 32-13, 32-14, and 32-15, relating to license to make excavations.
Parks and Outdoor, E, please.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay, for items,
CD and E.
yeah, for items C, D, and E,
okay.
I believe they need to be deferred until the 27th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you did say that.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hill.
Actually, if we could get Ross to come up and share with us what's happening with items C, D, and E, these changes, I'd appreciate it. Or someone from Public Works. I think we would all agree that once we pave a road, we want it to stay nice and paved for as long as possible, so.
So I'm going to let Ben speak to this since he's more fluent than I am at this moment.
Okay, last hurrah, Ben.
I'm still here, folks. Yes, so this is something we've been working on for quite a while. Katie Snyder started this process, and when she passed, moved on, she didn't pass, she took another job. Chris and Carmen took on this task, and this was about, but yes, this is making it to where all the street cuts in our new asphalt or rebuilding of new streets give us the longest lasting street possible. And we've got a presentation together that I believe we're going to present with Parks and Public Works on March 5. Just if you have any questions about it.
So if we're going to wait to get a presentation March 5th, how late do we need to defer these, not just 1 week then?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yes, we would like this to be pushed to March 5, please.
Okay. So we'll get a presentation March 5 and vote on them March 5?
It'll be such a great
Okay.
presentation, you'll be fine with voting on it the same day. I have total faith in Ross and Chris.
Okay. All right. Very interested to hear all about them when the time comes. Thank you.
You good, Councilwoman?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Parks and Outdoors, E, please.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Parks and Outdoors to apply for and, if awarded, accept a Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity RAISE grant for Alton Park and Crabtree Connectors, depending on inclusion in the capital budget and approval by City Council, for an amount up to $19,695,708.00, with a local not to exceed 20% match of $3,939,141.60.
See no hands. This concludes Parks and Public Works Committee. I want to thank you, Ben, again for the job well done. Ross, keep up the good work. Scott, keep up the good work. And I want to publicly thank all of those who gave me words of comfort in the times of the loss of my family. Thank you again. Legislative Committees next. Councilman Smith. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. We'll call to order our legislative committee meeting. Have a motion on the minutes? All right, thank you. I had a motion and a second. Meetings will stand as recorded. We do have one item that we're going to be discussing today, I believe only one. And that is for our beer ordinance update. Mr. Anderson, beat me to the podium, sir. If you don't mind, I believe you've got a small presentation of a couple of slides to give us an idea of what's been changed.
Very small. In addition to this title slide, I have a grand total of 2. So if you would indulge me and let me get through about 5 minutes of these 2 slides, I imagine I will answer most of the questions that people have before they ask them.
Perfect. Thank you.
So the legislative goals of this legislation are to reform the way the Beer Board, the Beer and Record Board operates. I think that most of the code was written in the 80s, and some professionalism is needed. Also, some additional help and support for the board is needed. So under this, the violations of the beer code ordinance will go to an administrative hearing officer as the first step, in keeping with the council's recent tradition of sending those to an AHO. Under the new ordinance, we would have 5 rotating AHOs hired by the Office of the City Attorney, who could be called upon to adjudicate violations of the beer code. Once that occurs, if someone is found in violation and they want to appeal, they then appeal to the beer board. And like most boards in the city, it becomes largely an appeals board for violations that are adjudicated. That doesn't take away the other layer of appeal at Chancery Court, which is allowable under state law. Everyone has that right as well. So you'd get 2 avenues for appeal after the administrative hearing officer. For permit approvals, we would be moving to the regulatory unit, which is CPD, naturally, to approve most permits. These would include especially special events permits, where right now you've got people that, they want to have a family reunion or some other kind of public event, and they have to, get on the beer board agenda, come to beer board, and it sometimes creates an issue with them just trying to have a family event. And because of old language in the code, they're required to do that. If there is an issue with a background check, an incomplete application, any red flag whatsoever, the regulatory unit sends that to the beer board for further review before a permit is issued. So we have the safeguard built in there. Slight reduction in the distance requirements. Currently in the code, it states that from a daycare, church, or school, restaurants that serve alcohol must be 500 feet from those locations, and off-premise sales or liquor stores must be 250 feet. We're proposing going to 300 and 200 respectively for that, mostly because, we've been talking about the zoning ordinance for months now. We're living closer together. What we've had, especially in Brainerd and a little bit of along Hickson Pike, we've seen daycare centers go into these commercial corridors thereby rendering out parcels in strip malls and neighboring properties that are zoned for restaurants unable to open a restaurant because now they're within 500 feet of a daycare center. So just a slight adjustment to that to give a little bit of breathing room as our city is growing and it's a lot more populated than it was in 1986 when most of these were written. Reassignment of the record cases, this is not a surprise. I know we've talked about this for a while. We have the only beer and record board in the United States. That's quite an accomplishment. So we are going to separate records from that and send them to the passenger vehicle for hire board, where they will focus more on transportation issues and the beer board will focus on beer-related issues. And then just general modernization of the ordinance. Antiquated terms have been replaced, that kind of thing, a lot of cleanup. So currently, the ordinance states, and you've got a red line copy, it's mostly red because this is mostly an overhaul. Currently in the ordinance, investigations, it says, are conducted by individual beer board members. That's what the ordinance says. Obviously, we do not prepare or equip individual beer board members to perform that function. So investigations in practice are naturally all done by CPD in the regulatory unit there, but this would be codifying what has been practiced for decades. I've gone over the permits, the initial hearings, the distance requirement. The last item, this is something that nearly everyone who comes before the beer board complains about. In our ordinance currently, if you have a disorder in your establishment, you are required by law to report it to CPD on a landline telephone. If you are in a seating area and there's a disorder and you need to call the police, it is illegal for you to do it from the cell phone in your pocket. Instead, you have to go back to the office and use the landline telephone. So I think this is probably the most welcome change in the ordinance. Any working telephone will do in the new ordinance. No reason for me to go on any further. I'll take your questions now.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
I've got a few, this is a great slide, by the way.
Thank you.
This simplifies many, many, many pages of nothing but red, 52 pages of red that'll make you go cross-eyed.
Thank you. I'm going to try and do this for y'all more.
Thank
where
you.
You can see apples and apples.
Love it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, so overall, great job on the overhaul. The only concerns I have are these distance requirements from 500, 250 to 300, 200, simply because I know a lot of times in certain neighborhoods, convenience stores are put up solely for the sale of beer and things like that, and it really can be a hindrance on communities that are already struggling. So I'm going to recommend an amendment to keep that at the distance requirement at 500 and as well as 250, because I think that it's going to be, that long-term will be helpful for our community. So that is my, that's going to be a recommended amendment to this, unless you can update and change it. I would love to hear from council if you have any, concerns about keeping the distance requirement at 500 and 250. I understand we're growing. I understand that we're becoming more dense, but there are some things that we just can't sacrifice, and this is one of those. So that is my recommendation, or,
We anticipated this would be a point of contention for the council.
All right. So that's all
You good,
I have.
Madam Chair?
That's it. That's all I got.
Hey, Chris, I've got one follow-up question about that then.
Yes, sir.
Are daycares, is the example you gave, are they allowed to open and operate inside of a commercial zone?
They are there, and it's happening all over.
So in accordance with the recommendation, maybe some tweaking for commercial, like a solely commercial zone, maybe have a smaller restriction as opposed to being right next to a residential zone, maybe some kind of solution like that we could come up with, because I agree, and I've seen that. I've seen a daycare open in a strip area, and then it renders a significant amount of commercial unusable for what it was intended for in restaurants and things of that nature. So I get the intent and I appreciate it, but maybe we just need to tweak it a little bit to continue to protect our neighborhoods while allowing the commercial aspect.
Mr. Chairman, if you would like, I can come next week with some sample language about what zones could be exempted out perhaps, or a different distance formula for specific commercial zones.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to echo Councilwoman or Council Chair's sentiments about the distance requirement. I'm good with everything on the board except that, as you probably guessed I would be, but anyway. I think maybe, coming and looking at some amendments or some altercation, or alternate versions of this would be helpful, at least for me.
Thank you.
You good, sir?
Yep, thank you.
All right, so remove all distance requirements in District 1.
Got it.
Got it. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you. I too am concerned about the distance requirements. One would hope that everybody would do the right thing. Unfortunately, they don't. So I like the idea of including, not making one size fits all, but there are some neighborhoods that you probably need a distance requirement. I'm talking about areas in my area.
Yes.
As you well know, we've been dealing with some of those. I also think that a daycare center can't render a whole area moot. So, and just funny, I love this, report disorders on working phones. Probably you wouldn't report on a non-working phone. So I think what you mean there is report a disorder on any phone.
By phone?
Huh?
By phone.
Yeah.
The ordinance says any phone in working order. That's the language in the ordinance. I just shortened it to fit on the slide here.
Okay, I was just saying you probably wouldn't report on one that's in non-working order.
Yes, ma'am.
It would be dead. But anyway, I get it, and thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah, I like it
Councilwoman.
otherwise.
There's actually a couple of instances in your district, well, one of them's not, but they're both in Brainerd Road, where, you've got a daycare center right up on Brainerd Road where we're really, we're working to get more economic vitality on that
Cool with
strip.
that.
And then it renders 1,000 feet total
I'm cool with that.
undevelopable for a
It's
restaurant.
the others I'm not cool with.
We'll come up with a zone-based
Okay.
solution by next
Thank
week.
you.
All right. Good, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, I've obviously heard the sentiments on the distance, so you probably weren't surprised to hear that echoed. I want to agree with Councilman Smith, and I think, Dr. Burrs, you're hitting on it as well. Yeah, this moving into a strip center or commercial office space, it's caused issues because you render it inactive, but you also create these pods, these imaginary circles, if you will, that start to affect commercial business that it was intended to house, and it starts having an effect. And what's interesting is that people will actually buy property close to something comes in like a learning center or a daycare, and then they end up looking, oh no, now I can't, because somehow that seems to have controlled and dominated. I think we also need to look at timing. If something was not there when you purchased property, you should have the ability to move on. Just because someone kind of snuck in and said, oh, I moved in to a rental space before you could get online with your I think that's a little unfair to businesses. But I do think we probably need to stay with the distance requirements. But I do think we do need to look at the commercial use and figure that out, because it is having an effect, and it does create some situations where it's kind of not fair.
Thank you, sir. I hope to return next week with a workable solution that everyone can support.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Good, sir. Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you. I'm very pleased with this idea to make some tweaks. And it occurs to me, we need more daycares, and so we wouldn't ever want them to be the bad guy, so to speak. We wouldn't want landlords to be turning them down because of the potential loss of revenue. And I suppose, I got to thinking, well, the same thing goes for churches that move into storefronts. But I do suppose that you have a private property owner that has a choice there, unless we have a church that purchases something that then impacts the locations around it versus being a tenant of something owned where a landlord can decide their tenant mix. So it could get a little tricky as we think about what zones, but those zones backward and forward. So will they be the new zones?
I'm going to be prepared with both.
You could do a slide of what it would be in one
That's what I'll
zone
do.
and what current and future. Okay.
We'll have the current zones and the equivalent future zones.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. Proposed.
I'm an optimist, but I'll put proposed.
Proposed.
There you go. That's all. Thank
Good, ma'am. Great. Chris, I see no further lights. Considering it was an incredibly long document that was full of red, we covered that really, really quick. So thank you for all the hard work. That has definitely shortened the amount of time that we needed to get some questions answered. So I appreciate all the effort and the work on this. I know it was long and a lot of work. And credit to the individuals who were smart enough to come up with that PVH board years ago.
Wonder who those guys were and
Wonder
what
who
they're
they
doing
were.
now.
All right. Thank you, sir. No
Thank you,
further
Chairman.
lights.
Thank
We
you,
are going
Council.
to adjourn Legislative Committee and move into Finance. Councilwoman Burrs?
Call to order the Finance Committee, Budget and Finance Committee. May I have approval of the last minute? Any disapprove of that? I'm going to hand something out to you all, FYI. Wait a minute, you should have this. All right?
Is there any more?
Yeah. We handed them the other way. Do all of you have the budget process flow?
No.
Can we have the extra budget process flows that went the other way? Here you go. This is just FYI. We need one more if you've got it. Please.
Passing papers is hard.
Passing papers is a challenge. Y'all did well. Okay, just for the record, this is the budget process flow. In February, we do departmental budget submissions. In March, we compile the request, work with departments to adjust submissions for a balanced budget. I know you can read, but I'm doing this for the record. In April, there's the final review with the executive leadership. I review it, and that's, please put a mark there. I want to come back to that. Prepare executive summaries and budget books, and then we will get the budget April 30th right now, ready for council to begin its approval process. The reason I'm saying that is that, Madam Chair, sometime before that, we need to have a finance committee meeting so that council can put its 2 cents in, other than just giving its budget and saying, hey, this is what we want. I have notes that council has talked about city court clerk's office, which we're doing today. Council has also spoken about enforcement, and there are other things that council has spoken about that I know you've asked for your 2 cents in the budget. In other words, we don't just receive it and up or down. What we want to do is also have our input. So just making you aware of that. This is the process. And just want to get on the agenda when we can, Madam Chair, in this process. You received the executive financial report for January 2024 about our revenues and expenditures. Are there any comments about that? Revenues have been a little lower. We're healthy, but they've been a little lower. Expenses about flat, some a little lower. Any comments about that? All right, if you do, just let me know. What we're here for at your request is the city court clerk update. There's been a lot of discussion about that office. We're speaking financially, and Vicki, you have a PowerPoint?
I think so.
All right.
There we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to address some of your questions today. We're going to keep this short. My slides aren't as short as Mark's, though. Sorry. Okay. This is just sort of a refresher for everybody. City Court is comprised of 2 distinct areas. First, the judge's office and the city court clerk's office. The judge's office, as you know, is a separate branch of city government, along with the legislative branch, you all, and the executive branch. The city court clerk's office is a division of finance, so that's what our topic's going to be today. Let's start with an overview of why the city court clerk's office exists. The office supports the city judge and the new administrative hearing officer as they enforce city ordinances. We keep all the records and disposition of those cases. We collect all the fines and fees from those cases, and we help the community navigate through the system. A brief overview of what we do. The cases we manage are referred from traffic, from animal control, from code enforcement, and new to us, from short-term vacation rental violations. We create and maintain the docket, staff the hearings as bench clerks, and serve as the collection arm for the payment of fines and fees, both in court and on an ongoing basis afterward. Other things that we do include working with a collection agency for delinquent payments, setting up and administering payment plans. This helps individuals reinstate their driver's license so they can drive illegally and be able to keep employment. We also manage old records, such as expunging them and abating them when a defendant is deceased. And a nice point is we add $5 that goes toward the Fire and Police Pension Fund. We've included an average number of cases that were referred to court on a monthly basis. This is supposed to be for 2023. This does not include the new AHO. Although only about 20% of the cases are actually heard, our office still has to handle the records and dispose of all the cases. Quickly, you asked for the staffing of the court. So we have the city court clerk, the deputy clerk, an administrative support specialist, and then 11 who also support the office. And then
What did you say? 11?
we have the clerk, the deputy clerk, an administrative support specialist, and 11 people who support them, both in the roles of technicians and assistants, which are graduated positions. And you asked for the budget. This is straight out of the budget book from FY24. And the one thing that isn't reflected in the budget here, I mean, it's included in the numbers, but you can't really tell that the budget does include space cost, and this is based on square footage of the court building. It's said short and sweet. I do need to thank Anthony and Jennifer and Alicia for helping get information together, because I asked a lot of questions. And I have a pen and paper because I know you all have questions. That's it.
Questions, concerns? Are there any? Oh, that's me. That's you. Yes.
She's itinerant. She's moving.
You're not coming on.
All right, so.
There you go.
So I just want to confirm there are a total of 12 employees that have handled.
Plus two more, 14.
14, oh, I'm missing.
Clerk and deputy city clerk.
Oh, city clerk and deputy?
See up here, these two.
Oh. So there are 14 people in this office. I guess when we talk, okay. So there are 14 people in the office. They've handled, it was 1.2 million, 22, 1.4 million, 23, and budget, and 1.3 million is now, and then 1.2 million coming into the new year. I'm just recapping this because I need to hear myself say this out loud. And they've handled almost, 5,900 tracked in code, and then only 1,000 have gone to court. I guess the question is 14 people needed to do this work? Because that's a lot, that's a big staff. How many staff in the mayor's office? 32? So, Mrs. Stone. But it's I mean, when I think about just our administrative staff, our administration staff, I don't know if they have 14 people up there, but I mean, that's a lot. So I'm just wondering, do we need, I mean, and not that I'm ever trying to put anybody out of a job because the city has plenty of vacancies. There's the opportunity to move people around, but, but, does this office need 14 people to manage it?
The caseload has definitely decreased over the last couple of years, and that's dependent on who's writing citations. And with more AHO stuff, that also is in their record keeping and disposition and collection. So until we really know where we land on the number of cases that come through as we change with the AHO, it's a valid question, but I don't know what kind of caseload we're going to be handling.
Okay, and I guess it's a question, I'm gonna throw Chris Anderson here, about the AHO. Now, does the AHO have staff that's assisting him that are outside of this, outside of the clerk's office?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. The clerk's office does provide a level of support for the administrative hearing officer, and we're currently transitioning to them being purely supported by the court clerk staff. But in the case of AHO Exum, he has a paralegal at Chambliss who's been assisting him as we set up the process.
Okay, so, okay, that's fine. Thank you, Chris. And then, so it sounds like we need maybe an audit of this office to understand the caseload versus the amount of staff that they have. This is just my just running thoughts as I'm kind of thinking about the amount of money we spend versus having 14 staff members and knowing that we're always hiring at the city in one office. So those are my comments / questions. And also, one of what we do is verify the validity of driver's licenses with the state of Tennessee. Could you get a number of how many people we're really impacting with that? Because I know people without driver's license, you can't get your car, you can't go to work, and it becomes really a systemic issue. So could we get numbers on how many people we are actually helping get the license back?
I think I already have the number of where we do the payment plans so that people don't lose their license. I think I already have that, but I will make sure I get that for you.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. I think that's it. Thank you, Councilwoman.
I have several questions. Vicki, would you go back to your original slide? These are...
Nope.
So what is this community safety together? What is that? Is that?
The community safety?
Yeah, is this their own, where did that come from? That graphic?
Oh, that graphic, we honestly think that making sure that the citations issued from CPD, that making sure that the codes enforcement, we really do think that that has a component of community safety.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the only reason I was saying
just a
that
graphic
is there's
for it,
been, so if council were to change that, we're not going against community safety together. I've never seen that before, and it looks like a bit of a sales pitch. Okay, go to the next slide.
You wanted something nice in here.
I bet.
Yeah.
Where was the one that said the judge and then?
That was the first one?
Yes.
Is that piece
all
right there?
So I just want to make sure I've got this correct, because I get this question and I get it from my colleagues who are not asking now, so let me be able to answer that. The judge's office is a separate branch of city government, and the judge is elected, and that's sacrosanct. I mean, all right. Now, does the judge also get, I don't have the broken down budget here, which I would have really liked, okay? And council has asked for that. So the judge's office, or what's relegated to the judge's office, is some amount of money, which would include the judge's salary plus what?
They are not under finance. I can get the information for you. If you'll ask me exactly what you want, I will find that information for you.
Well, what are they under?
General government.
So it's under general government. So, so who could tell me here in this room what the budget is for that and who's in charge of that?
They submit their own budget. They do not go through a department.
They do not go through.
They do not go through a department. They
So,
submit their
Ryan,
own.
is that you? I'm not sure who it is.
To Vicky's point, it comes through as essentially a pass-through. So it's a data request. Ask us what data exactly you would like. It sounds like you want the budget breakdown for the judge's office, and we will provide that to you.
That's what we asked
and
for.
that's
We
no
asked
problem.
for,
Sure.
not that, this is all city dollars that
Yeah.
goes to this thing called city court.
Yep.
All right. And whatever, do you have any idea what that total amount of money is?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Well,
But
then
we
I
can have
guess
that
we
within
would like
24
that.
hours or so.
And the judge's salary is published. In other words,
Sure.
what are we paying for there? Which is different from the court clerk's office, which is what we got the breakdown on.
Sure.
Okay? So then go to the breakdown of what they do. All right. Are you saying that they handle go to the figures?
I'm going to tell you, I tried to back these into other numbers I had, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't put a lot of stock in these numbers right here.
They look a little off.
They do. But this is what I was provided.
So, it's okay. So I'm thinking what council had asked for was literally a breakdown of numbers. Like, there's a pot that's called judge's office, there's a pot called clerk's office. What is the breakdown of the expenses? I know we pay rent to the county for the offices, the courtrooms. What I think council was asking for was, what is the breakdown?
Okay, that's totally out of the budget book. That's easy.
Yeah, the breakdown, like there's so much for salaries, there's so much for whatever, because it's hard to know, it's hard to make a conscious decision about budget if we don't know what they're doing and how many people there are. That's Madam Chair's question. And are they needed to do that? And let's say they all are. These are really honest, open questions. The thing is, we give a certain amount of money to the judge plus salary. What is that for?
I do know that the judge has an assistant, and I do know that they have court officers.
Okay, right. And somebody had asked one time about, does the court officer have a vehicle? Or, those kind of things. And so what we were looking for is, what's the breakdown? Does that make sense?
And we can do that, however, that is not under finance. So we can get any.
It's under a city budget.
It is.
I don't care who it's under.
Okay.
May we have it?
We can get that for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you, Councilwoman Burrs. So I would also like to understand what we are paying for and what we are getting. Because we as a council have an ongoing challenge of enforcement. That a codes case goes in front of a judge, nothing happens. Or a case goes in front of a judge repeatedly, and there are fines, and still nothing happens. And we've had conversations about the AHO, and those fines have increased with an AHO. We hope that we will have more enforcement capacity. I would like to understand what is our amount of money owed in fines? And I'd like some breakdowns of our top accounts that need to be paid. I think it's interesting that we are working, that this office does work with a collection agency, but I'd like to understand that. I'd like to understand better abating cases when a defendant is deceased versus if someone has been a terrible neighbor and has been a problem to the neighborhood for years and has thousands of dollars in court fines. I don't know that abatement is the appropriate answer there when you have a family that is sharing ownership of a property, and it's, I think that needs a little bit more attention. And perhaps that's something that when we have the whole department audited would be helpful. Also, this tracked encode, what does encode mean?
That's the system that they use to track all the cases and.
And so total violations handled on a monthly basis that are tracked in their software. So in a computer software, does that mean that, tell me what that means. Tell me what a violation is.
You could potentially, if you are, let's say if you're pulled over by the police department, you can have multiple violations for one stop.
Okay.
And each of those is tracked as an individual thing in the system with individual adjudication.
Okay, so let me repeat back to you what I just learned. So if I'm pulled over by the police for doing a U-turn on Market Street Bridge, I've only done it once and I was pulled over. It's been years and years. It was a bad choice. So if I'm pulled over for that and I get a reckless driving and you're an idiot, we don't give those, but get a handful of things. So I might walk out of there with 5 violations. Every one of those is tracked and is in this
encode
5,924 monthly. Okay, so, but it's
That
one person
doesn't look right.
with one issue. So when I do the math on that, 5,924 violations a month divided by 14 people, divided by, say, 20 work days. That's 21 violations per person per day to be entered into the system. But when a police officer pulls me over and gives me my violations, does the police officer enter them into encode? Or do they fill out a Post-it and send it to the clerk? How does that work?
You are getting way beyond what I have done in city court in a long time. Some of the things come across electronically.
Okay.
Some of the things are manually entered. It really depends.
Okay.
And it's not just entering it, you also have to set the docket.
Uh-huh.
And you have to let the people know.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to show up at the court to tell what happens with each and continually collect what is not collected. There is reporting to the state that's involved. It's more than just putting it in the system one time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Ryan, perhaps some of this is falling more toward operations overall, but how much of this is digitized versus sliding over a note? I would hope that our codes inspectors have a way that they enter a violation into a system and that they're not just handing over a yellow legal pad at the end of every week to then be tracked. So I really need to understand, just as a council person who continually feels like the challenges that my neighborhoods face are not adequately addressed within the system that we have, the court system we have, I need to understand where's an opportunity for improvement. Because the product, the service that we are providing to our community, I think needs to get leveled up somehow. And if these resources should be used in a different way, I want to understand that better. That's all. Thank you.
You good, Councilwoman?
Yes.
The other thing that we might add there, Vicki, is that the police actually aren't using city court much anymore. They're going to sessions court. And so that's something we need to think about as well. Councilwoman Knoll is next.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So my question would be, can you go back to the slide with the 11 individuals?
Kim? 14. Maybe. I'm challenged there. There we go.
I actually got a couple of questions, so. I'm just curious as to what they do, actually do. And then my next question is, so is this another situation where we actually give money and nothing is reported back to us as to how those funds are being used? Is that another situation? Hello?
I'll take the second question.
Okay.
I'll take the second question, and then
Thinking.
Vicki can maybe describe the positions a little bit. But no, this is not a quasi-agency, this is not, I mean, this particular, the city court clerk's office is a division, is a department within the finance department, okay? So this is not an agency or a quasi-agency that we appropriate money to and have less accountability in some way. No, the judge's office is a little bit of a different story. That's a different branch of government, right? That is a bit more like an appropriation where, that's where Vicki's trying to draw a bit of a line between the judge's office is a little bit different. And it's the judge and it's about 4 or 5 individuals total, right? But the clerk's office is clearly a division within finance and a part of the city. So that is how she's trying to kind of differentiate between the two. So does that help answer that part of your question?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay.
Still really not quite clear on that. Court operations and technicians. What's their job description? What does that? Give me a clear word version on that.
They are the ones who make sure the citations are in the system correctly. They are the ones who set up the dockets. They are the ones who tell what happened with each one of them. They are the ones who make sure that contact for payment, that talk to people on the phone, that process the payments. They are the ones who work with getting the delinquent things, the delinquent fines to the collection agency, reporting what they've received to the collection agency, doing the reporting that has to go to the state for this, working on the payment plans for people so they can keep their driver's license.
Okay. So do you know how many they serve on a daily basis?
I do not.
Okay. Is that possible to find out?
How many they serve on a daily basis. I'm not sure how you would track that. I mean, they don't track their phone calls. They don't track their emails.
So at the end of the day, if you have 5, they're working all day. I'm assuming 8 hours a day. Is there any way for you to tell us how many, what did they do at the end of the day, those 5 individuals? A number.
I'm not sure how I don't track how many phone calls and emails I get in a day, and I'm not sure how they would do that.
It would require a study.
Yes.
I think that what you're asking for would require a special study. The data that we're providing here is the data, and we could go deeper into some of this data in terms of, the violations that are recorded in the system that they're processing and that sort of thing. In terms of the number of emails sent, calls made, number of people that they're interacting with on a daily basis, we would have to have somebody conduct a study and sit with our team to really, ask questions, monitor, et cetera. That's not happening on a daily basis right now.
And I did try to get a feel of how they interact and what the volume of each type of interaction. And it is not tracked that way.
Okay.
It's tracked by the source of money, but not the daily interaction.
Okay.
I did check.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
The court operations assistants, so who are they assisting and how they assist?
They're assisting the clerk. That's the lowest level of help within the department. The least paid, the lowest level.
So the clerk has 6 individuals.
You give a feel for what they're doing.
Your technicians are going to handle the more difficult things. They're going to serve as your bench clerks. The assistants will not. So it's just a graduated level of responsibility within it.
Stand up with the judge. So is a bench clerk the one that's standing there with the judge?
Correct.
Okay. And how many courts is it that you have to have a bench clerk for?
Every time there's a session.
But we only have one court.
We have one court.
What?
But then they have the morning and the afternoon sometimes, and you're gonna divide up the responsibility.
Okay. Morning and afternoon is the court session. Sometimes. And that's who the bench, right?
The bench there will be a bench clerk there for each one, but not multiples. I mean, there's one for each one.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're good. So city court only meets in the morning, right? And then the administrative hearing officers
I
meet in
think
the
I've seen
afternoon.
dockets in the afternoon as well.
Oh, well, last time we talked, they just were meeting in the morning, but that's okay.
I did go on and look, and the last time I saw, there were dockets both morning and afternoon.
So I think what council is asking for is, and we've got some more questions, is maybe an audit. Definitely an audit of what they do. And I think it's out of, we don't know. And that's easily done. It can be done in a week, an audit. And then I've made notes, some other things they've asked, but let's go on because we have some other council people. Are you good, Councilwoman Noel?
I think I have.
For now, are you good?
I think well, one last question. So the bench, supporters or whatever, okay. How many hours is a session?
I do not know. I'd say it would depend on the number of cases that are on the docket.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It would depend on the number of cases on the docket.
Okay.
Perhaps an audit would, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Vicky, for answering our questions about the finance part. But I feel like that it probably would have been more helpful to us to have the actual clerk of the court to come talk about the court and the positions and all the questions that we're answering you. That would have made more sense. Or to have Judge Pay to come talk about the judge, what she does versus you. But I'm appreciative of you standing in for him. And I'm sure you'll, with the notes you're taking, you'll get us back the things that we asking. But are we able to get the data that shows, because Councilwoman Burrs mentioned about the police officers that write the citations or so to Sessions Court, are we able to track those, like how many actually could have been served under city court? Because if they have the discretion to say, I want to write this ticket, however, I'm not going to send you to city court versus to Sessions Court for whatever reason, then of course those numbers are going to decline. When they can very well, if it happens in the city limits, they should write it to city court.
I would agree.
Is what I would like to see happening moving forward. If some kind of way they can make that happen, that's my only concern. But I know with the driver's license portion, it seems like every time I go by there, it's people filled up in in the office trying to get their driver's license restored or get on some kind of payment plan.
They do a lot of work with that.
So they do kind of do a lot of work in that area, but not just with that. Like, they do stuff that you wouldn't even imagine that they're doing. And so I don't want to minimize our court, city court, at all, but I do agree that maybe we could get an audit to see exactly what's going on. It would be helpful for me if we could, actually hear from the clerk, our city court clerk, to address our concerns, even if it's during our strategic planning meeting. I don't think we're giving him a fair opportunity to address our concerns of our questions if we're only limited or being told to the finance department coming. And it's nothing against you. Is that no other department person that runs that department, they don't send a finance person in to address their issues. So, I just don't think it's fair to our city court clerk to have the finance person to come in when all our questions weren't even around just the finance. I asked for an update from him, from the clerk of court, to come and talk about it. I didn't ask from a financial perspective. But again, thank you. I appreciate you coming.
You good?
Mm-hmm.
All right, anyone else? Madam Chair, did you not want to say anything? I saw your light went off.
I had a lot to say, so I decided to just hold off until the audit comes.
Till the audit comes in. Okay, I see nothing else here. No other people wanting to speak, so we will adjourn till, yeah, I know. We will adjourn till 5:45.